Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Say Again podcast after a short break. This is episode 56, and I'm your host, Amrita Tripathi, in conversation today with a founder, a former managing director and CEO, and an author. So delighted that we have with us today Mr. S. Devarajan. Welcome, sir, to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Amrita. It's a pleasure.
And we'll have you, give us a little bit of the insights we can glean from your leadership expertise over the decades. Mr. Devarajan is a former managing director and CEO of Tata Elxsi and the author of Design to Win, actually, which chronicles a lot of that journey. That book has just recently come out. He's also the former managing director of Cisco Systems in India and the founder of Transmation Consulting. So it's great to have you on. You said I can call you Dev, but I think I'll have to revert to Mr. Devarajan or Dev sir. There's some conditioning there, but thank you so much for...
Choose yourself.
So, I do want to start by asking you a little bit about, the book. Will set the context for this chat, of course, which is your journey. And you were one of the youngest, directors in the Tata Group. You took on the mantle of this firm when it was struggling and really turned things around. So lots to learn from there. But one of the first quotes I had picked up, which I found interesting, is early on in the book, you say, "In this book, I've tried to tell you as comprehensively as possible how the first computer company founded by an Indian in the United States went on a global journey." And I thought that's so interesting, especially sitting where we are today, because there's been so much conversation around, Indians, Indian talent in the US, what's going on in tech, in AI, etc. So can you start by sharing a little bit about why you thought this was an important journey to take your readers along with?
They talk about the world being flat, and that conversation started about 15 years ago. But this is a story that goes back almost more than 30 years ago when this computer company called Elxsi Corp was set up in the United States by an Indian and a couple of other friends of his. And it was actually the first computer company set up by an Indian in North America. So that's a phenomenal milestone that one can talk about. And not too many people can, tell the story, right? And what happened was his journey to India is a very interesting anecdote too. Elxsi there was trying to raise capital. They got their first round of funding locally and they wanted some more money. And incidentally, Mr. Ratan Tata was in the United States and talking to the founder, Thambi Thomas, and was so enamored by his invention, his system, and what he was trying to do. He put him up to the Tata Sons board, and then they decided, why not invest in this company? And they put up X million dollars into this company. And then the arrangement was that Tatas would get hold of this technology outside of North America and Europe for the Asian market, for the Indian market. So to do that, they found it preferable to move Elxsi, part of Elxsi, into Singapore, and it was called Tata Elxsi Singapore. So that journey began from the US, but it's not that it was just an offshore center or a GCC in Singapore. The design of the systems was going on in Singapore parallelly, and manufacturing also started parallelly. And both North America and Singapore started manufacturing these machines for their respective markets. However, like most startups and most mature companies, technology keeps changing very rapidly. So the technology which was used in the Elxsi Corp, which was state of the art those days, was kind of superseded by a new generation of chips and technology that came into the market. And Elxsi had to kind of fold itself up into another company called Trilogy Systems. And Elxsi as a company and a product kind of wound up. So, not wanting to give up, Tata Elxsi Singapore decided to relocate itself to India because India was a market which did not have access to these technologies, to see whether we could manage it here. So that was the journey of Elxsi from North America to India. There's a lot more to it, but this is the trailer.
The trailer, and of course, folks should also get your book, which chronicles a lot of the ups and downs. And I'll ask you a little bit about that because, we're, of course, in an era right now where, entrepreneurs are very highly regarded. I think there's a lot of interest in how, the sort of what all the magic elements are. And you talk about some of the challenges along the way. So you started in IIT Kharagpur, and I'm going to come back a little bit to your own journey. But while we're talking about Elxsi, so you were managing director and CEO between 93 to 2001. And it's safe to say you inherited some challenges because this company was not doing super well when you took on the mantle. You, of course, share behind the scenes details about how you and your team turned things around. Can you share a little with us, of that journey, and also maybe projecting on what are some of the lessons learned in terms of strategy? And I love how you talk about the importance of relationships also and investing in people.
Okay. So maybe you want to split that question into
Yeah.
multiple ones because you asked a lot. So let me start with what happened when Elxsi came to India. Coincidentally, when Elxsi came in here, we invested a lot of money to import the manufacturing goods needed to manufacture Elxsi systems, imported a lot of kits in, and back there in the US, it was all, a parallel happening. The company closed down and we were bundled with all this without knowing what to do next. But we manufactured some of these machines and had quite a few customers in India. But then it was not kind of going to be something which would be on for the long term or even the medium term. So we looked at an alternate technology to sustain ourselves. And that was with a company called Silicon Graphics in the Bay Area. We tied up with them to manufacture those machines, which were very similar in capability to the Elxsi machines, except they also had very high performing graphic workstations, which go along with the computers. So that was the next phase. We tied up with them, bought all the manufacturing kits required, bought all the know-how, paid a lot of money, brought it here. And the same year or maybe a year later, the government of India opened the whole country up. The liberalization happened. The economic reforms happened under Mr. Narasimha Rao's government. That was 91, 92. So all the investments that we had made in Elxsi in India, in Silicon Graphics in India, were all dud. It was not required anymore because you could just import the latest technology that you wanted whenever you needed it. So here was a company which had just started, raised capital from the market and was saddled with so much of goods which were done, which meant that it was, sitting on very, very deep losses. And that's the time when, I was approached and said, can you come here and do something about it? That Mr. Kohli of TCS, who was also the chairman of Tata Elxsi then, met up with me and he said, hey, almost like Houston, we have a problem. He said, Dave, we have a problem. Can you come on board and see what you can do with this company? And I joined as head of vice president of sales and marketing. That's when my turnaround journey started.
So I'm actually curious to know, because you knew actually that the company was struggling, right? It was not it was quite transparent, that conversation you had.
Yes, it was told to me, yeah.
Yeah. So why would you at that stage say yes to this? How did you see that challenge? And
it was a fantastic challenge, Amrita. It was something not too many people can come by, And it was a Tata company, one, and it was full of problems. And when somebody as senior, as respectable as Mr. F.C. Kohli, who is considered the father of the IT industry in India, talks to you and says, why don't you come over and help me? And of course, I knew that I would get his support, get the board support in my journey. So it was something that very few people today can claim to experience, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So in retrospect, the spoiler is, of course, it worked out because you were able to turn things around with your team and, the board. But at that point, I do want to ask you, because I feel like sometimes we do hear from leaders afterwards, of course, that, you learn so much from failure. But for most people, going through your career, when you make these decisions, many people are risk averse. Many of us are worried about failing. Was there ever a thought in your mind that if this doesn't work out, then X? And how did you navigate that?
Honestly, I expected it to work. I knew, see, after all, you run a business the way it is to be run, it shouldn't go wrong. I mean, the chance of it going wrong is not very often. External forces were in our favor. I knew we could create a market for this. We could create a scenario where this company can succeed. And there was a method in the madness which I thought we could approach with and make it successful. And I love taking on challenges, Amrita. So I said, let's do it. Let's try.
That's very cool. That's very cool. So, you have some anecdotes in there. If you can share a little bit, and I will come to, I know everyone, we all want to know more about Ratan Tata. You have a few anecdotes with him. There's one part, in this story where he wants you to change the name of the company. And then you kind of push back, even though you do get options from your team. Can you take us through that episode?
Yeah, this was a time when, like I mentioned in the book, and you also talked about, we were in doldrums. And the only one, I would say, facet of recovery was to raise more money. So, 2 or 3 things we could do. We had to do. One is raise money. 2 is re-evolve our strategy and create a market. So all these things were not there for Tata Elxsi then. It was different. It was there, but in a different kind of way. But we wanted to reschedule this and align ourselves to these three recovery stages. Raising money was required, and that's the only way we could fund ourselves to revise our strategy. When we approached him, and otherwise the company was also going to get into deep trouble if he didn't raise money. So he said, you want to raise money, but who's going to subscribe to this? I said, I want to raise it through a rights issue. Go public, and you're already public, so do a 1:1 rights issue and raise some more capital. He said, the company is doing so badly, and do you think anybody will subscribe to these shares? So I said, Mr. Tata, this is a Tata company. We have a name, we have a brand, and they would trust us. So he said, yeah, if that is so, let's go ahead. Of course, I'm reducing this whole dialogue to 2 sentences, but it was a long tete-a-tete. Then he said, when we are doing that, you see, Devarajan, Elxsi is kind of no more there in the US. As a brand, it doesn't exist. As a computer, it doesn't exist. That's not the business we are in anymore. So why do you want to hold on to that name? Let's change the name from Tata Elxsi, along with this whole money-raising strategy. We had spent the last 2-3 years building the brand, the Tata Elxsi brand, started to create the market. So I said, Mr. Tata, if you do that now, we've already started creating the brand. People know Tata Elxsi. And many of our newer prospective customers don't even know that Elxsi was a computer brand. So we kind of revised ourselves so well. So he said, anyway, I think you should go back to the drawing board and figure out a name change and come back to me. So you can't say no. We said, okay. And my CFO was there with me, and both of us flew back from Mumbai to Bangalore, and we were brooding on the flight, and then came back. And then I said, okay, let's run a internal competition amongst the employees for a name change and seek a recommendation. So we got a whole bunch of names, and then we shortlisted finally 2 names. Then my CFO came and told me that, hey, listen, the name change is not so simple. We have to call for a shareholders meeting, and that involves a lot of money. And we were quite broke. I mean, to be honest with you, we were very broke as a company. He said it'll cost a lot of money. Then all the hoardings, billboards, name letterheads and business cards, and the whole suite of changes that we need to make. So he said, I don't think we can afford it. And the money was not very big in today's terms, but it was big all right for Tata Elxsi. I said, no, in that case, let's not change the name. So he said, how are you going to handle it? I said, we'll see. So let's cross the bridge when it comes. Next flight again to Mumbai, and sat down with him and told him the reason why we can't change the name. He said, you can just go to Tata Industries. They'll give you money. How much money do you want? They will give it to you. Not a problem. I said, Mr. Tata, that's why we are in a problem today. We've been borrowing and borrowing and borrowing money from Tata Industries and elsewhere, and we are in deep debt, and I don't want to borrow 1 rupee more. From now on, whatever business we do as a company, we will churn it from our own funds. We will not borrow any money. I said, okay, so be it. He accepted it outright. It was, I would say, so sweet of him. He knew what I was talking, and he wanted to keep the delegation on and say, okay, you want to do it your way, I'll support you. But then he said, tell me what those 2 names are. Can you give me that? So I gave him the chit of paper with the 2 names written on it. And much later, a couple of 2 or 3 years later, I found those 2 names popping up in the market. Tata Unisys, there was a company by that name, where Unisys America, got out of the joint venture. So it was Tata with no tagline. So that became Tata Infotech, which was one of the names we suggested. And then Tata Motors actually moved out their engineering division and got into a services division, and they floated it as another company. And that was Tata Technologies, which is listed now. That was another name of the company which we had suggested. So the name stays, everybody's happy.
That's pretty cool, actually, to see that it's actually been used. Right?
Like, yeah.
Good ideas always end up somewhere. I think that's fantastic. So is there anything...
just think of his attention to detail, right? He just took that piece of paper, didn't say anything more, but then nevertheless it was used not just the next day, but a couple of years later.
So with Ratan Tata as a leader, are there one or two attributes like that you think, people, it's good for people to know, like attention to detail, the fact that he was also okay delegating? I mean, he suggested
Yeah.
something, trusted your expertise also and your
Yeah.
opinion.
So, no, the early years in Tata Elxsi, because it was his baby, it was an investment that he had made, and he was very close to the company. And he actually used to review, outcomes of the business and the status, and would be rather tense and worried too, because it wasn't doing well in the early days. And he would review quite a bit, and he would never question the whys, or the house. He would just look at what are the outcomes, what did you all do, how did you all do it. He would never question and tell you why did you do it this way, why not this way. He would just give you suggestions to add on, but never question our methodology, our strategy. That was him. And he was a technology geek. You give him one of these things to play around with, and he was very happy. There was a time when he gave us an hour for a demo of an engineering design system, and he sat with it for about 2.5 hours and shooed away all the other meetings that evening.
Yeah, you're right about this. It's quite a cool insight into his personality as well.
Yeah,
Right? Like, 'cause
yeah.
if someone's coming in to tell him that his next meeting is there, he's like, no, I want to focus on this. So he was a tech geek. That's lovely to hear. So I do want to ask you a little bit about along the way, as I was saying, I'm reading the book and seeing the journey. I was really struck by how important some of the characteristics you describe are, which are, perseverance, the importance of relationships, not being transactional. There's this interesting anecdote about how you set up a bond with the team visiting from Japan, and that really pays off later as well.
Right, right.
I want to, somewhere towards the start of that journey, you're talking about your own self as a young executive, actually making this ride by Coracle, which really, demonstrated many things to the client team. Can you take us through that anecdote? And we'll keep going.
That's a chapter I call the James Bond moment for me. It was, I'd reached this one-horse town called Kurnool. It was in interior Andhra Pradesh. It was my first job, my third year in my career. The proposals with the client had gone back and forth for a month or two, and I knew he was ready to decide. And I had fixed up a meeting with the CFO of the organization. It was a very large paper mill in Andhra Pradesh, and I had to go there. And the morning after I reached, and the only way to reach there was a ferry, the company ferry, which was across the Tungabhadra river, which is quite a mighty river. It's almost like, I would say, the Ganga in Lucknow, or, it's quite spateful there. I went there to the ferry point on the banks of the river, and the guy said the ferry is left. I said, yeah, it'll come back, right? Because every 10 minutes I was told it goes back and forth to bring the employees. That's the only way to get there, because there was no bridge yet. Then he said, he called up the opposite end, and he found out that the ferry was under scheduled maintenance, and it was not going to come back till evening. And I did an overnight train journey to Kurnool from Chennai, where I was working, and spent an overnight in a hole in the wall lodge. And next morning I get ready to go, and it was not possible. Then, while this conversation was happening, this guy at the ferry point told me, I can fix a ride for you. And he muttered something, and this guy in a dhoti came up to me and said in Telugu, which I didn't understand. So I used my Hindi and he used his Telugu. We communicated, and realized that he was willing to take me across. He said, come. And I had a briefcase, and proper, smart pants and a crisp white shirt and shoes. And here I was going through slushy mud banks of the Tungabhadra. And there I see this 4 feet diameter coracle. I don't know whether you know what a coracle is. It's one of these round boats made of cane and kind of bound with rope and laced with leather and all that stuff. It was looking rather flimsy, and more than that, looking very scary. And I looked at it and then looked at the other end. It was a long sail to cross the river, maybe about a kilometer or something, something like that. I didn't know. It looked like many miles to me. Anyway, I got onto it, and he said, no, you have to sit on the edge of it, sit cross-legged. And I could see water spouting from all over the place. And then I said, okay, let me sit on my briefcase. I sat on my briefcase, cross-legged. And he said, hold on to the sides this way. I said, oh my God. And then this guy sat in the opposite, diametrically opposite to me. And we started going, and I couldn't think of anything. Honestly, my mind was a blank. But midway across the river, the damn thing started going round and round. And I'm not too good with this water and these turbulent boats and all that. in normal times itself. And then we reached the other end. The moment I got off, and some of these guys, security guys from the company saw me, the ferry guys saw me. They were aghast. My trousers had become wet a bit. And it was really embarrassing for me, But then he called a jeep and I went across to the office. But I had fixed up this meeting. I had to meet the CFO. I've come, 90% of the journey. The last 10% I had to do. And it was an appointment I wanted to keep. So let's do it. I don't know whether I will do it today. I'm the wrong side of 40, so I don't know whether I can do it today. But I did it then, and I was not displeased with myself, except when I met the CFO, first thing he did was showered me with abuses, and he fired me for doing what I did. He said, anyway, I've done it, I'm here. There's nothing you can do about it. It's all done. And he was very happy, and for the discussions we had. He asked me to go freshen up. I was a young kid. I was about 24. He asked me to freshen up and then gave me a hot cup of chai. Then we had the meeting. He was very happy. Then he said, now that you've come all this way, shall we see if the MD is free, the managing director of the company, and you can have a word with him. Then we were asked to wait for about 20 minutes, and then he walked me to the MD's office, and I said, hello. Then he described the whole, instead of describing my proposal, he described the whole incident to it. That man was livid, and he said, it is our responsibility, blah, 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 and all that. Anyway, then he said, I loved your perseverance. I loved what you did. And if this is the kind of relationship you're building with us, I'm sure as a customer, you'll take care of us very well. I said, believe me, sir, we will certainly take care of you very well. And immediately told him to release the purchase order on us, give us a check for 30% of the advance. I was never a happier man, that day. And then, of course, I got back on the other end by ferry, the company ferry, which was ready.
They made sure that you're not going to be. But I love that story also because of the response it gets from them, right? Because they realize that you're so committed to this, that you were not taking... You didn't take that
That was not my charter. That was not in my agenda. My agenda was meet the goal,
Yeah.
Somehow,
Yeah. That sounds like something that stood you in good stead throughout your career. And if you have folks listening in or watching this chat who might be, founders or even senior executives, even junior executives. I mean, you took an initiative very early in your career to do that. But what are some of the lessons you would have for them? 2 or 3 lessons that you think would stand us all in good stead?
See, be perseverant. I mean, that's a lesson I've just told you, And again, it's very important. There are 3 or 4 things. One is be perseverant in whatever you do. And second is be a team player. That's very important. Be a team player and carry your team with you. It's not you and the others. It's us that's working towards a goal. It's like a cricket team or a soccer team or a hockey team. It's not just me playing tennis alone. It won't work. So be a team player all the time and don't separate yourself from the team saying I'm the boss and you guys listen to me. Go with them because in the process you also learn. It's not everything. It's not always that the leader knows everything. The younger kids in the team also know a lot and many of them know more than you. So in the process, it's an exchange of various things. In the process, when you're spending that much time with the team, you learn a lot. And that takes you a long way too. While the team also learns a lot from you. And thirdly, I think you need to be extremely passionate in what you do. Passion is what drives the whole philosophy of success, and that's important. And you should be there, that should be right in the front line of your vision in what you do. If you're not passionate and if you can't be passionate, you're doing the wrong thing. It's not the thing that you want to be doing because if you can't get passionate about the goal, then you're chasing the wrong goal. You're in the wrong place. You're not in the right job. That's my mantra.
That is interesting. Yeah. So maybe, revisit the goals if you're not finding that.
Yeah.
And have you changed your outlook on, success and failure over the last, let's say, 10, 15 years? Looking back at your career, we were talking early on that, you saw the opportunities when there were big challenges, challenging roles. You were up to the challenge, ready to make your mark. How have you looked at success and failure now over the last maybe 10, 15 years of your career?
No differently from how it was in the beginning. Honestly, it's been a learning all along, which is true. And so when you're trying to tackle a problem, you're always revisiting some of these experiences in the past. I did it this way, then it worked. This didn't work. So let's follow the path that works, But it's not always that the same path will work. You start thinking within yourself and saying, let's go for it. Why shouldn't it work? Rather than saying, why will it work? I try to figure out why it cannot work. Then it makes it easier for you to attempt it.
That's interesting. And then again, the solution kind of mindset comes in.
Solution, yeah, always. And if the problem is humongous, break it down,
Yeah.
because you can't confront a big, huge problem, hitting you like a big boulder. Break it down to smaller problems and then try solving it little by little. Not try. You will solve it little by little. You have to solve it that way and you'll be able to overcome it.
Yeah, I love that.
And keep your goal, keep your goal, your vision in mind all the time,
Yeah.
What's the big picture? What are you trying to achieve by doing all this? So please keep that big picture in front of you. Say, I'm a photographer, so I always look at, what do I see from the viewfinder? I see the whole landscape.
Yeah.
I see the scenery. The whole thing is important for me. I need to get there. But in the process, in my journey, I see that little leopard cub sitting in the bushes. Let me handle that first. Then I see this 2 elephants frolicking around. So let me handle that. So these are all the small targets en route without which you cannot achieve the big picture, your vision.
You can then maybe not get phased by the smaller challenges because
True that.
you have
Yeah.
so much. So when you look at, I was listening to one of your chats, I think it was the Deccan Chronicle, where you were saying it's very important for leaders also to have high EQ. And this is something I'm interested in. We do a lot of work in the mental health storytelling space. And I'm curious to know, because, nowadays, this idea of being quite empathetic as a leader or compassionate as a leader is something that has come up. It wasn't always in the jargon, I think, even a couple of decades ago. How do you, and you're on several boards, you're still very active. How do you rate leaders? Do you think that empathy is an important attribute?
Very important. Very important, Amrita. I think I've been like that very early in my career, even before I became a leader. I would say I would deal with people with a lot of empathy, because you always do it better if you know their point of view, where they're coming from. And like I always have this mantra, people work for people, they don't work for companies. So that's very important to remember. And unless you have that drive, that empathy drive, as I call it, you can't succeed. And you build very lasting relationships that way, which I proudly say I have. I have customers of mine who have dealt with 4 generations of customers. Can you believe it? In the same corporation. Grandfather, father, son, and now that son's son. Now, I still work with that client in Chennai, but pro bono, because I've known them for 40 plus years. And they reach out to me and say, Dev, why don't you come and help us? And we have this problem. And I say, okay, I'll just come and spend 2 days with you. I do that. And it's now the 4th generation that I'm mentoring, So I love to keep those relationships. Even when I launched the book, I had customers of mine who worked with me in Tata Elxsi 30 years ago. They came for the book launch and they did the fireside chat with me on what we did, the journey we spent, succeeding on various things, So I think that goes, even with your team.
Yeah.
I would never pick up the phone and talk to a colleague of mine in the office. I would walk over to his office, his cubicle or his cabin, or wherever he's sitting, and chat with him for 2 minutes, get my work done, and talk to him again for another 2 or 3 minutes on his personal life or something like that, something he's going through, and then come back to my office. That adds a lot of warmth in the relationship.
Yeah. And like you said, it's such a small, because, you also talk about how someone's inviting you to the cinema. It's like a a long-standing relationship.
That same guy. That's the person I'm talking.
So it always also surprises me that, it is quite a small ecosystem. When you start your career and people do remember how you treat them, I think. Especially as a leader. But, that brings me to one of the last few questions for the moment. When we were talking about some of the challenges people have right now, and you just said that, it's an important thing to be able to go and walk over to your colleague and have a chat.
Correct.
You mentioned you think remote working is a challenge. Can you give some of that insight in terms of your tips for people in navigating the new sort of work-life balance and just work experience? And I would just say juxtapose that with the thing that we know a lot of people are very stressed out about, all of the volatility, right? What's your advice for folks?
Yeah, this whole remote working thing has, I would say, removed emotion from the whole system. You're not bothered as to who you're working for, where you're working from. What does your workplace look like? When we go to our desk or your table or your cubicle or your cabin, you put up a small poster there. You put up your own note there. You put up your pen holder there. There's a lot of your personality shows up there, right? But now what? It's all a monitor in front of you, and God knows whether it's just put on mute and the guy is doing something else. There's no connection. There's a communication which is very crisp and business-like. Okay, let's do a 30-minute meeting tomorrow on this project. And we do a 30-minute meeting. There's no hi, bye, nothing. And at the end of 30 minutes, everybody logs out. So what's the connect? Who am I working for? So I don't know whether this is sustainable. What is the commitment that the person has to his organization, to his boss? How does he imbibe the culture of the company? I don't know, because company culture is very important for you to build a career. Or do people don't want to build a career anymore? They just want to do a job. I have seen that happen, in my peer groups at the younger levels, friends, kids and all that. They say, yeah, we're happy getting a good salary. We don't care about a career. I don't want to become something. As long as I get a good job with a good salary, I'll stay on. Tomorrow I can switch anywhere else. It doesn't matter. That's the vibe that is going around. Honestly, if you ask me what's the answer, I don't know. You can't say no to it because this is something which is here to stay.
Yeah, and the convenience, I think, right? Having remote
Convenience
teams.
factor, yeah.
And any tips, just last two questions for you, tips for anyone navigating this volatile, it's macroeconomic and obviously globally it's very volatile, but also the job markets have been pretty turbulent of late.
Yeah, that's a cycle, Amrita. The job market being turbulent is a cycle. It happens all the time in all industries across the globe. And you just have to grin and bear it. It'll change for the better. Everything goes through its cycles. So I won't worry so much about that. Yeah, the person on the spot will be worrying, but this is something you have to live with.
Yeah, and wait for it to come back around.
Yeah, it'll come back. It'll come back,
I love that.
Industries are always growing. Companies are always growing. The world is becoming better, modern, all that. So for all that to be kept sustained, you can't have a very ebb tide job market all the time. No?
Yeah.
It'll move.
That's reassuring. I hope those of you watching or listening feel a little bit more positive. And as we wind down, sir, can you share a little bit in terms of gratitude? Anything you're grateful for you'd like to share?
Where do I begin? I feel as if I'm giving an Oscar award speech and I'm grateful to so-and-so. I don't want to get there.
It could be, maybe one or two people, especially for maybe with the book and your career and,
Yeah, so in my career, I would say one of my best mentors I've had in my career so far is Mr. F.C. Kohli of TCS, was my chairman. He was a wonderful gentleman. After I moved on from Tata Elxsi, I went to Cisco. I was there, and it's about 25 years since I left Tata Elxsi today. And every year, irrespective of where I was, I used to go back and meet Mr. Kohli, talk to him every 3 months from home. We would have a long chat for about half an hour. And he turned 92, 93. Even then, during COVID, I used to go and I used to call him up. And he said, yeah, keep calling here. It's nice to have a chat with you. We used to, have a beautiful connect with him. And he taught me a lot. He didn't actually teach me. He showed me the way. And I realized some of those paths that he took were very, very different and very scenic. So I would, regard him as one of my heroes, sung heroes, not unsung heroes. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that.
Certainly my dad, he was great in my younger days. He always allowed me to decide. He would never impose his decision on me. I mean, that's a very odd character for a dad. Even I believe I'm not like that. But he would always give me options and say, okay, you decide.
Yeah.
That made my thinking prowess became very honed with that kind of subjectivity. So I certainly thank him for that, because he made me think independently all the time.
And that's definitely stood you in good stead, I think, over the course of your life and career.
Yeah.
Those are great to
And not forgetting my team at Tata Elects.
Yeah.
I had a fantastic team.
Yeah.
Fantastic thing. They kind of bore the brunt of everything that I was trying to do.
Yeah.
Sailed along with me and did everything along with me. They said, we will do it for you. Let's do it together. Let's win it. So that, me motivating them or them motivating me, I didn't know what was happening. Honestly, I owe it to them a lot,
Yeah.
I owe it to them a lot. Yeah.
That's great. And I
So
hope they...
at my book launch, I invited
Yeah.
62 peer group employees of Tata Elxsi for my book launch. Out of that, 60 turned up. Some of them from the US, one of them from Europe, and from across the country.
That's amazing. That's quite a bond that has stood the test of time.
Yes.
They must be very proud also to read about their journey in this book. So wishing you many more amazing stories to share, many more readers for this book. Thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you, Amrita. Thank you. It was a pleasure working with you.
Lovely chatting.
Yeah.